So we finally have gotten to a graph that has a vertical translation. So I kept talking about this midline D. So whether we're talking about sine or cosine, this graph is a cosine graph. Cosine of B times the quantity x minus c. We know that A is going to be the amplitude, B impacts the period, so the period is 2 pi over B. C is going to be a horizontal translation, so that's a left-right move. So where was the up-down move? Right here. That's our up-down, so that's our vertical translation. So that tells us where our midline is going to be. Where is our midline going to be? So here on the graph y equals 2 plus 3 times cosine of 2x. This is one of my favorite graphs because it's got some really good parts to it. The amplitude has changed, the period has been affected, and we have a vertical translation. The midline is not on the x-axis. So in this case, let me move this down a little bit. In this case, it's going to be shifted up 2 units. So this part right here tells us that we need to shift up 2 units, right? So the midline is going to be at y equals 2. That's our midline. And then what does this 3 tell us? It tells us that's the amplitude. So if our midline is at y equals 2, we're going to have to go as high as 5. So we'll have to go as high as 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. -1, -2, -3. And then the period is going to be 2 pi divided by 2. And 2 pi divided by 2 is just pi. So let's change this back to gray. So pi will make this a length of pi. Halfway between 0 and pi is pi over 2. And then halfway between 0 and pi over 2 is pi over 4. And halfway between pi over 2 and pi is 3 pi over 4. And going to the left, we've got, it's a little bit too much to the left right there maybe. Maybe not enough. Right there. Negative pi, and then halfway is negative pi over 2, and then halfway negative 3 pi over 4, and halfway was negative pi over 4. So I'm going to use a highlighter to show you where the midline is. So there's our midline. And the cosine curve starts at the max, and the max is going to be up 3 units from the midline. A pi number of units later, we're going to be right there at the max again. And then halfway between the two maxes, at pi, when x is pi over 2, we're going to be at a minimum. If I go down 1, 2, 3 from that midline, our minimum is at -1. So we have a minimum is -1, a maximum is equal to 5, and the midline is smack dab in the middle. It's at y equals 2. And then halfway between the max and the min, we're on the midline, And I'm going to continue that to the left. So we'll have starts at the max, cosine ends at the max, halfway between, we're at the min, and then halfway between the max and the min, we're at the midline. And there's our graph. This has 2 full cycles, 2 full periods. It's another way to say cycle, period. 2 full patterns. 2 full patterns. Here's one of them. There's one of them, and here is another. And that's how you graph vertical translations.